Hi guys, welcome back or welcome to DreamWorks Switch to Life. And in today's video, we're going to be discussing the second installment in the Kung Fu Panda TV shows, that of course being Kung Fu Panda, The Paws of Destiny. So this series is available on Amazon Prime Video and I highly recommend you watch it, but one thing that you have to know before watching it, during the course of its 2-season run with 26 episodes, this TV series isn't really a TV series. It's more like 2 5-hour movies that are split up into 13 episodes each. So when you have 5 hours of your time set aside, go ahead and watch the first season, and then when you get another 5 hours, go watch the second season. The 2 seasons tell completely separate stories, and yet when it comes to the episodes from start to finish, each episode takes place immediately after the previous episode. So really, again, it's like a 5-hour movie with 12 intermissions. So I would say that this series is best enjoyed by binge watching, unlike the other TV show Legends of Awesomeness where you could just watch one episode at a time. The good news is that unlike Legends of Awesomeness, because each episode takes place immediately after the other, we know exactly what the order and timeline of the franchise is when it comes to placing this series. It takes place after the third movie, that much is obvious. However, I also believe that it takes place after the fourth movie because this series actually marks the first occasion where Po has been going by the name Dragon Master instead of Dragon Warrior, which is really important because he's still going by Dragon Warrior in the fourth movie, at least in the trailer. So I think what the fourth movie is going to do is make it so that he's retiring from Dragon Warrior, but he's going to step up to a new position and give himself the title Dragon Master. And thus, we get this new series where he is going by Dragon Master. So let's talk about the behind the scenes. I really enjoyed the animation of this series. In fact, it's probably the best animation out of any of the Kung Fu Panda TV shows. Yes, that does include the Dragon Knight. Honestly, the main reason I'd say that this is the best animation is that unlike Legends of Awesomeness, where they kind of lost the texture, they actually do have fur texturing in this show, so it looks like you're looking at a movie rather than a low-budget TV show. They actually put a lot of care into making this look good. I also really enjoyed the music and the sound design for this scene. The music is just so beautiful, and it's not taken from the movies. It's its own thing that stands out, and I really enjoy that. Especially some of the background themes where we have like rock and roll guitars or something. I'm actually not sure what to call those instruments. Now, let's talk about the voice acting. Aside from Mr. Ping, who's voiced by James Hong, all of the returning characters are voiced by brand new actors. In fact, I gotta say, I loved all of the voice acting all across the board. Mick Wingett as Po instead of Jack Black. He's not as good as Jack Black, but he still shines through, and I'm glad that they brought him back for this series. And the same thing can be said about the other actors who portray characters like Li Shan, Mei Mei, Grandma Panda, and even the new actor for Bao. Bao was this little kid in Kung Fu Panda 3. Now he's a full teenager in this series, which is good because I guess now it's time to dive into the actual story because if I don't do it now, we're going to be here forever. So spoilers ahead. So the story starts with Po coming to Panda Village to bless the sacred peach statue, and unfortunately that statue is destroyed by 4 kids, Bao, his sister Nu Hai, and their friends Fan Tong and Jing. Feeling sorry for themselves, Nu Hai makes a plan that they should go try to get the pieces of the peach statue and bring it back to the village, but unfortunately it goes wrong and they accidentally break into the Temple of the 4 Constellations where they are bestowed Hero Chi, a once-in-a-generation offer that for some reason was locked inside the Temple of the 4 Constellations for over 1,000 years, and these 4 kids happen to be chosen by the universe. So now Po has to stay in Panda Village and train these kids, or they are going to be killed by the villain of this series, Jindao. Now, feels like a good time to go back 1,000 years in the past and discuss what exactly happened. So, a long time ago, pandas were considered the guardians of the wellspring, which is the source of all chi in the entire universe. Unfortunately, Oogway ended up making the decision that the pandas needed some help, so he trained Dragon Master Jindao to end up guarding the wellspring alongside the pandas. Jindao ended up training for other students of his own, and they became known as the 4 constellations. This includes Blue Dragon, White Tiger, Black Tortoise, and Red Phoenix. These 5 warriors were gifted with hero chi, including golden chi going to Jindao. Jindao, realizing he's the most powerful of the entire group, decided that he should become the most powerful being in the entire universe, and the best way to do that was to harness the energy of the wellspring itself. Because of this, the 4 constellations stood up to stop him, but unfortunately, it cost them their lives. The only way they could defeat Jindao was with the spirit urn that was made by Bunny Dharma. But unfortunately, Bunny Dharma overslept, and thus the spirit urn was never delivered. So the 4 constellations sacrificed their lives to try to separate Jindao from his body. And while the plan did work, Jindao's spirit was left to roam the world, and thus he was forced to inhabit the body of a vulture. And for 1,000 years, he's been laying dormant, planning his revenge, trying to find a way to get back into the Temple of the 4 Constellations so that he can take their hero chi, so that he can then claim the wellspring as his own and become a god. One of the last things the 4 Constellations did before sacrificing themselves was write a scroll detailing why Jindao was evil and how to defeat him. But unfortunately, they never got the chance to actually deliver that scroll. So that means that the scroll was eventually discovered by Po and his students when they went back to the Temple of the 4 Constellations. And Jindao has made it his mission to not let that scroll fall into the wrong hands. So he first summons a demon to take it from them, but unfortunately the 4 constellations, the new ones, managed to defeat that demon, the Yao Guai, and so Jindao takes matters into his own hands and decides to take the scroll for himself in the 4th episode. And at the same time, he tries to take Po's hero chi from him by slipping some poison into his body. But unfortunately, that plan doesn't really work out, and Jindao is severely weakened, so Jing decides to use her White Tiger hero chi to heal Jindao. But in the process, that means transferring some of her chi into Jindao, which Jindao can then use to control Jing. In the meantime, Po is trying to figure out who poisoned him, so he goes to Tuoluo, the source of where the poison actually comes from, only to discover that the poison was sent to someone named Jade Tusk, who is secretly working as the leader of the Poison Clan, and the Poison Clan are working under Jindao. Because of the control Jindao has over Jing, he decides to make her tell the gang that they need to go to the Temple of the Heavenward Plum Blossom Serene Moonbeam. Yeah, that's a stupid name. It is at this point that Po finally discovers the secret of how Jindao is actually the Dragon Master and is apparently evil and wants to take his chi for himself. And after having a fight against a possessed Jing, Po ends up losing the fight and loses his hero's chi when Jing steals it, gives it to Jindao, and then Po supposedly dies, but he is eventually found by Bunny Dharma, the same person who built the spirit urn that was meant to trap Jindao. And Bunny Dharma actually heals Po before going through some training with him so that he can try to reconnect with his hero chi, but unfortunately that plan fails. In the meantime, Bao, Nuhai, and Fantong go back to Panda Village and try to warn them against Jindao's threat, but they're too late. Jindao attacks, causing a sleeping spell to go over the entire panda village. And it's at this point that Jing reunites with the team, and the team decide to help her try to fight against Jindao's corruption before trying to escape the panda village by going into some underground tunnels where they discover Jiju, who is apparently a weapon of the original four constellations and supposedly friend of pandas, but and so Jiju actually helps them escape. But then, of course, Jindao decides that the priority is capturing the children so that he can eventually take their hero chi. So he follows after them, and eventually Jing fights back against Jindao's corruption so much to the point where they actually cause an avalanche, and thus Po manages to find his students thanks to Bunny Dharma's help. And thus they try to fight Jindao, but he's disappeared because Jindao is actually afraid of Bunny Dharma, because Bunny Dharma happens to be the only person who can make something that can defeat him. The good news is Bunny Dharma doesn't actually know how to use the spirit urn, so unfortunately, that means that the panda kids have to travel to the spirit realm to talk to the original four constellations about how they are supposed to use the spirit urn. And when they return, Jindao captures them and takes them to the Temple of the Four Constellations, where they find the wellspring hidden in the peach statue. Then the four constellations end up sacrificing themselves again to stop Jindao by separating his soul from his body and putting him in the spirit urn. But unfortunately, Jindao plays them by putting the vulture spirit in the spirit urn, which frees up his spirit to remain free, and thus use the wellspring after stealing the four constellations' hero chi. He ends up using the wellspring to get his old body back and become the most powerful being in the entire universe, essentially a god. And thus Po ends up making the decision to skadoosh himself and Jindao into the spirit realm before Jindao tries to escape the spirit realm, and Po has to fight against the Yao Guai again. But after the Yao Guai's defeat, Bunny Dharma, who was killed by Jindao earlier, ends up telling Po that the spirit realm doesn't follow the rules of the mortal realm, and that nothing can change who you are on the inside. Po is still the one true dragon master, or I guess dragon warrior, and thus Po decides to meditate, and he actually becomes a full-on dragon. And that's really cool to see, so there's that. And thus, Po takes the fight to Jindao alongside the four constellations before the team ends up going to Panda Village, where they finally, at long last, manage to trap Jindao's soul in the spirit urn before sending the spirit urn to the spirit realm, and thus all is right with the world. And that's the entire plot of the first season. On to the second season, which is very different. The Emperor of China sends a message to Po and the four constellations that he wants them to investigate the origins of a drought, which is a problem because getting to the Emperor's palace is a journey in and of itself. They have to go to the temple of Sun Wukong, the Monkey King. Then they travel across the desert, and they finally make their way to the Imperial Palace, only to discover that the Emperor has died, and his daughter, Zhao, has taken over as Empress of China, and she wants them to investigate the cause of the drought, and that eventually leads them to the catacombs, where they discover an army of terracotta warriors who are activated by red jade. Red jade happens to be a special mineral that can be imbued with chi, and some of that chi came directly from the wellspring. Yes, the same wellspring that's the source of all chi in the universe, the wellspring that's supposed to be guarded by the pandas, and it went missing because it was stolen by the main villain of the movie, Shilong. Shilong is the adoptive daughter of the imperial family and Empress Zhao's sister, which is a bit of a problem because that means that before Zhao was born, she was supposed to be next in line for the imperial throne. And then, of course, Zhao was born, so she didn't really have any friends until she met a demon, the White Bone Demon, an old enemy of Sun Wukong, who decided that she needed to be freed from the spirit realm, and Shi Long was the person who would make that happen. So, working with Shi Long to form an army of terracotta warriors made up of red jade and the chi of the wellspring, causing the drought, the White Bone Demon ends up building herself a body made up of iron as well as red jade, which she can then inhabit, and thus she is brought back from the spirit realm and into the mortal realm and becomes the Iron Goddess. In the meantime, Li Shan, Grandma Panda, and Mr. Ping go on their own adventure trying to track down where the wellspring was taken, which eventually leads them to the Imperial Palace where Shi Long locks them in prison to be executed. Meanwhile, Po and the Four Constellations are given a shipment of rice via dirigible to take to the people of China who are suffering from the drought. Unfortunately, this shipment of rice is actually gunpowder, and it's a ploy to try to kill the Po and the Four Constellations. Because of this ends up making them stranded at the ocean until they wash up in Gongmin City, where they discover that red jade is being sent from the location of Volcano Island. Meanwhile, Lee, Grandma Panda, Mr. Ping, and Cart end up breaking out of prison alongside Rooster and his two goons, villains who were featured in the previous season who are making a comeback as mainstays in the second season, end up going to Volcano Island as well. Also, Empress Zhao, who is trying to not be assassinated, ends up trying to teach herself some kung fu, only to run into a brand new teacher, Jay Tusk, one of the villains who from the first season who was on a path of redemption after Jindao ended up betraying her and the Poison Clan. So, Jay Tusk is teaching Empress Zhao how to defend herself with kung fu, as well as giving her a dagger made out of her jade tusk. Then, of course, there's also the scenes where Po, Lee, and everybody reunites on Volcano Island, discover the plot to bring about the Iron Goddess, and they try to put a stop to it, only to end up failing when the Iron Goddess is resurrected, and thus Sun Wukong shows up trying to take back his crown, which is apparently a key to not only giving himself power, but also if somebody else were to put on the crown, they would be in control of Sun Wukong, and he doesn't want that. It turns out that the crown is actually on the head of the Iron Goddess, so after knocking that off, Nu Hai puts on the crown, and thus controls the Monkey King and battles against the White Bone Demon, which ends up making it so that the prisoners hanging from her belt are free, including Rooster, who decides to go out on his own, and eventually he comes back along with an army that helps in the final battle when Sun Wukong's magic gives out and he can no longer fight the White Bone Demon. And when that happens, Sun Wukong finally gets his crown back as well as his freedom, and the White Bone Demon, or I guess the Iron Goddess, is defeated. But the White Bone Demon, she's actually still alive, given a mortal body and that looks more like a bat, and she's hiding herself, probably for a future season. And eventually peace returns because, unfortunately, by destroying the Iron Goddess, they also made it so that the chi of the wellspring was spread across the entire world, making it so that chi is no longer a kung fu / panda thing. It's a everybody thing. Anyone can use chi no matter what. Which actually leads me to believe that there were future seasons planned for this show because, well, I don't know. They were probably canceled behind the scenes for some weird reason. Maybe it was just that the first season didn't get enough views, or maybe it was just that Universal wanted to stop working with Amazon Prime, and rather than let the show continue on a streaming service, they just ended it on a good note. So, to be honest, due to the fact that these are like 5-hour movies, there is so much going on that it's really complicated to just put into a small review, especially because most of these scenes are action-packed or they're emotional, but there are definitely plenty of scenes that could have been skipped over if they wanted to make this movie shorter, or I guess if they wanted to make the series shorter. But I guess they had a quota to make where they had to get to 26 episodes, and that was it. So they had to drag it out to the point where they made a 5-hour movie. And I don't think this could have been shortened to less than 2 hours, but I do think it is a bit long and there are some scenes that are unnecessary. But overall, I find myself enjoying this series so much. Really, my one complaint about this series would be that it doesn't include the Furious 5 and Shifu, but I guess since they're off defending the Valley of Peace, which is not featured in this series at all, it makes sense why they wouldn't show up. In the end, it's kind of impossible for me to do a review on this that's actually good if you don't actually go and watch this series for yourself, because there is so much going on that no matter what happens, I am bound to forget something. But all in all, I thought this was a really great TV show, or I guess a really great couple of 5-hour movies that I really enjoyed, and I highly recommend that you guys go and watch this thing. And by that I mean binge watch it, so when you have the time. But again, it's not really important for the overall Kung Fu Panda franchise. Some people don't really view this series as canon, and that kind of makes sense to me. But this series is so good that I honestly can't bother asking why would you make yourself miss out on this just because you think it might be not canon to the story. It's still a really great show that I would definitely recommend you go and binge watch if you have the time. So with that in mind, that's my review for Kung Fu Panda: The Paws of Destiny. Overall, a really great show that is best when binge watched, but still really enjoyable, especially if you are a Kung Fu Panda fan. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and please make sure that you like and subscribe so you can keep up to date on all things DreamWorks. But make sure, most important of all, that you're staying safe out there, and I will see you all in my next video. But until then, bye-bye.
I found you in the snow. You look pretty dead, but you weren't. Good for you!
Oh, come on!